Good evening. You are at the Oshkosh Area School District Board of Education regular meeting. Based on the ongoing health issues involving COVID-19, school board meetings will be held for the public in a virtual environment and in the interest of everyone's health and safety at this time. It is our sincere hope to return in-person meetings with the public present as soon as possible. The board will be using Zoom as its host, to host its virtual meeting, and will be live streaming this public meeting on Oshkosh Media YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/Oshkosh Media. Are we in compliance with the open meeting law notification?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Please call the roll.
Herzog.
Aye. Over here.
Carnes.
Here.
Peschel.
Here.
Saligi.
Here.
Wright.
Here.
Wyman.
Here.
Carlin.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, thank you. All right, Dr. Davis, would you be willing to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Carlin, seconded by Salaji. Open for any discussion on whether to modify the placement of any agenda items. Seeing none, please call the roll.
Carnes.
Aye.
Peschel.
Aye.
Saligi.
Aye.
Wright.
Aye.
Wyman.
Aye.
Carlin.
Aye.
Herzog.
Aye.
All right.
Motion carried. Motion carried.
Thank you. This evening, I'm going to forego my board president's report. I'd like to allow more time for the superintendent and for our student representatives this evening. So going on to number 2 is the superintendent's report.
Excellent, thank you. Annika Larson is here from Oshkosh West High School. So Annika, thank you for joining us tonight. And we'll start with your report.
Great. All right, so just kind of an update on what's been going on. Oh, thank you. Perfect. On what's been going on with Oshkosh West. We had our homecoming in this past month. This actually is not the right slideshow.
Oh, is this the last
This is
one?
the old slideshow, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I sent the new one in, I want to say yesterday. I can resend it right now if we have to.
Okay.
Oh, I think it's called November update.
Why don't you send it to me
Okay.
when you're ready?
It looks exactly the same, so that could have been part of the confusion. Besides different content.
So David,
Oops.
dot,
Oh my gosh.
dot, put that right at the top.
Perfect. All right.
One of the advantages of being me.
All right, there we go.
There you go.
All right, so now a little bit about what's been going on at Oshkosh West. So that was pre-homecoming. This is post-homecoming. We actually ended up selling over 1,000 tickets, which was great. Student council brought in over $10,000 for that. We also had a very successful parade. We had lots of floats, as you can see. So that was super fun for all the students. What's been going on. So we hosted a Hallow Week. So that included our Global Academy juniors collaborated with our leadership classes and our special ed program to put on a haunted house. And that was a huge success, as it is most years, every year that we have it. And then we had a Halloween costume contest. Our Spanish club decorated calaveras, which are like skulls for Day of the Dead. And we also had our blood drive, which we had over 100 students donate blood, which means up to 300 lives can be saved, which is fantastic.
That's awesome.
More on sports. So in kind of the middle there you see Ava Wiesenberg and Sequoia Eckstein. They are equestrian state champs in Disciple Rail and Saddle Street Equitation. And together they actually earned 12 top 10 finishes and placed 7 as a team in the entire state. And they also earned the Spirit Award as a team, so it was very successful for our young equestrians. Girls cross country, they got second in sectionals, and they went to state. And then Elijah Jeffers placed 7th in sectionals and also went. We have our swim team, they placed 2nd in conference. We sent 5 girls to state tennis. And then that's a picture of all of our boys soccer players who received honors. We had 2 players make first team, 2 made second team, and then 3 got an honorable mention. Music. So last week, our Oshkosh West bands, all 4 bands had their fall concert. It was very successful. And then yesterday, actually, our orchestras had their concert. So the music department has been very active, and now the bands are starting to prepare for their holiday parades and their holiday concert. And then I actually wanted to take a second to highlight CIEE Summer Abroad, which is a program through that partners with the Global Academy at Oshkosh West to send students on trips all around the world in the summer. They can choose to go on a culture trip where they stay with a host family. They can go on a service trip, or they can choose a topic of their choice. So there are topics like world government was one I actually went on in Portugal, which was amazing. There was one about climate change mitigation in Costa Rica, all sorts of things. There's Spanish language and culture in Madrid, activism in Dublin. So we had 7 students participate this year, and it was very successful. So it's a cool opportunity for students in the Global Academy that I just wanted to highlight. And that's all I've got.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And I don't think, so Owen is not here yet, so if we get to Owen, we'll fit it in at this
We'll make
point.
time.
So, yeah, so we'll jump to the superintendent's good news report. So to start with, we had Washington Elementary recently enjoyed a STEM Family Showcase Night. Elementary schools throughout the district are hosting these events as a way to connect with families, share school goals, and learn about science, technology, engineering, and math concepts. Washington had over 200 people participate in their STEM engagement night, so congratulations to everyone involved in that. Third graders at Carl Traeger Elementary School recently enjoyed a mystery meet with their Global Read Aloud class. Students used their geography skills to figure out which state they live in, and then talked about their Global Read Aloud book, Dragons in a Bag. So congratulations to everyone in there. It looks super fun. Jefferson Elementary students recently enjoyed reading with local police officers. This monthly activity in our elementary schools throughout the district is made possible by the Oshkosh Noon Kiwanis. So thank you to the Kiwanis Club and the police department for their participation in the Cops and Kids program. I had an opportunity to join my colleagues with CISA 6 as we met in Madison to recognize our legislators and thank them for their efforts and involvement in the Assembly Education Committee and just their work overall. So it's just a picture with Representative Hintz. So again, we appreciate his time and all the efforts that have gone into our work together. And so this is something maybe that Owen was going to report, but I can do it for Oshkosh North. We have our communities program in Oshkosh North is once again going to be hosting the Sweat for a Vet fundraising event tomorrow, Thursday, November 4th. So I'll be participating in that. I have not determined what level I will be participating at that in, but I will do my best. You can learn more about the event, sign up, and donate for that event on the community's webpage. All funds go to the Got Your 6 canines which is a nonprofit organization that helps veterans transition back into society. So thanks for the Communities Program for organizing that event, and looking forward to participating in that. And then finally, just the list of activities over the past week. So it continues to be busy and being out in the community, but it's been great. So thanks for everybody for hosting me across the district and the community. So, and that concludes the good news report for tonight.
All right, thank you. And next up, we are on 3 district administrator supplemental reports. We have a COVID-19 update. Mr. Kamara.
Good evening, everybody. So as I mentioned last week with my COVID-19 update, we're continuing to see a downward trajectory in terms of the case rate of COVID-19 in our area, but that downward movement has slowed quite a bit over the past week or two. Based on the Winnebago County data summary from last week, the case rate for the geographical area of our school district was 395.5. So we are inching closer to the cutoff between the high category and the very high category, which is 350. So right now we're still considered in a very high category for case rate in our area. So hopefully that downward trajectory continues, but we will continue to keep a close eye on the numbers as they come out from the county. When looking at our under 18 population, we actually increased slightly from last week. We had 75 cases in our geographical boundary compared to 67 from the previous week. And when broken down by individual age groups, for the under 5 age group, we had 15 cases. For the 5 to 9 age group, we had 24 cases. For the 10 to 14 age group, we had 23 cases. And for the 15 to 17 age group, we had 13 cases. On the vaccination front, you likely have heard that both the FDA and CDC approved the COVID-19 vaccine for emergency use authorization for those between the ages of 5 and 11. So we've been working with the Winnebago County Health Department to set up vaccination clinics at a couple of our school sites. So right now we do have a clinic set for this upcoming Monday, November 8th, from 3:30 until 6:30 at Oaklawn Elementary School. And then there's a follow-up second shot clinic at Oaklawn scheduled for November 29th. And then on Tuesday, November 16th, also from 3:30 until 6:30, we have a clinic at Shapiro Elementary. So depending on how turnout looks at both of those clinics, we could always schedule a third clinic if there is high demand. We do want to stress that for this first clinic at Oaklawn, there is a limited supply. We have about 120 doses to give out, and those are the pediatric doses. Those will be provided on a first come, first served basis. If there are adults or those who are 12 or older that accompany a student who's between the age of 5 and 11 as a family member and wish to be vaccinated, we can accommodate at that time as well. But this clinic isn't open to the community. It's exclusively for our children who are between the ages of 5 and 11. In addition to that, if families miss out on the opportunity to have their child vaccinated at one of our school clinics, Walk-in Wednesdays continues to occur at Winnebago County Sunnyview Expo Center. And they will have some pediatric doses available starting with this upcoming Wednesday. And then many healthcare clinics and other vaccinators in our area will also have some pediatric doses. So if you're interested, please check into those places as well. And then last but not least, our latest school dashboard update was done on October 28th. And again, this is updated every Thursday. And this past Thursday, as of October 28th, we had 53 active positive cases in our districts. In our district, 48 of those were students and 5 of those were staff. And when looking at the cumulative totals for the entire school year thus far, we've had 427 positive cases in our district, and 28 of those were suspected in-school transmission. That concludes my report.
Is there any questions, comments?
Question.
Go ahead.
I noticed this last week as well when we went over the numbers that the age categories from 5 to 10 to 24, 10 to 15 it's 23, but 15 and over is down to 13. So one would suggest that, or that would kind of suggest that they've had access to the vaccine, that 15 in age group have had access to the vaccine since, like, I forget when we were able to get those. Do you happen to remember?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact date that it was made available to that age group.
But hopefully, now that they've had the vaccine and they're cutting their cases in half, I'm hoping that when we get the vaccine out to the younger age groups, that, do you think that's fair to assume we can cut those in half too?
It's hard to say. I mean, I don't know if we can attribute it to the vaccination rate.
Okay.
The hope is we have fewer students who contract COVID-19, you know, as our vaccination rate increases,
Right.
which will in turn, you know, help our students and our families be healthier and keep our kids in school.
And one quick question. What did you say was the very high threshold? When does that start?
350.
350, okay.
Yes.
And are we getting close to the next?
So we're at 395 right now. It's really difficult to anticipate when we're going to fall below that threshold. Because like I said, that decline has slowed slightly. But hopefully we continue to drop and see that in the near future.
And what can we do to make sure our kids stay back in school?
If your kids have symptoms or aren't feeling well, keep them home. They have symptoms, get them tested. That's the best way to ensure that we keep positive cases out of our school. But then the typical mitigation strategies of masking, hand hygiene, the things that we've been stressing now for the past year.
Thank you.
Mr. Wright?
Recently, I'm sure you're probably aware of this as well, DINA rolled out a new policy as it pertains to COVID-19 protocols. And forward thinking with our COVID-19 strategy, they evaluated data from other school districts, et cetera, and they took, they're pleased with the fact that now younger kids are going to be able to be vaccinated. So they're planning, you know, and moving towards the next phase of COVID-19 policy. So in staying in alliance with other school districts in our area, I just want to make sure that, you know, we're planning on in the future maybe doing some of those same things. Because a higher percentage of our kids should be vaccinated soon. And I guess that's my comment.
Yeah, and just to, to address that a little bit, certainly we're taking a month-to-month, you know, look at it. That's why we wanted to make sure we're monitoring our numbers. But we do feel when we get to that, you know, if not December and January, as you think about students this week or in the upcoming weeks being able to get vaccinated with their first shot, second shot being mid-December, and 2 weeks after that having full vaccination. That first wave is going to fall right around New Year's. So the thought is, you know, for the from a vaccination standpoint, that we can get ourselves to early January and be in a much better space. And I really do think that that's somewhat of a game changer from things that we haven't had protection with in the past.
Right.
That I think could be really helpful. So we'll continue to go month to month, but certainly hopeful that we can get an off ramp, you know, in January. Still continue to monitor the numbers. You know, still continue to, you know, go classroom to classroom when we're talking about, you know, any situations where we need to go virtual. But there's certainly, you know, we're continuing to meet with this, you know, districts that are in the area and be able to look at what, how they're looking at monitoring, you know, masking, even if it's optional. Many districts have, you know, some threshold of, you know, percentage of the school that would trigger a masking for 10 days or something like that. So those are all options that we're looking at and kind of thinking forward to as well.
Yeah, I appreciated that. While I was reviewing and reading through through NINA's new policy, I saw that they did have a threshold in place for when masking would or wouldn't be required, and they are moving forward.
Sure.
You know, and I think it's at some point it's going to be time for us to do that as well.
Yep.
So thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Go ahead.
I have a question, and Dr. Davis kind of hinted at it. Is the pediatric vaccine, sorry, I'm still, I don't remember words, is it also a 2-dose
Yes.
process? Okay.
Yep. So the actual dose itself is about a third of what a typical dose is for an adult the Pfizer vaccine, but yeah, it is also a 2-dose process.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right. One last opportunity for questions and concerns? No? All right, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
We always appreciate
Thank
your
you.
report. All right, Mr. Gunlock, do we have anyone in the waiting room this evening? Okay. So with that, I'm going to forego the reading of the rules and regulations related to public forum, as we have no one waiting to speak with us tonight. So moving on, we are at our lead workshop for the evening. It is the district-wide data accountability report that will be led by Ms. Conrad and Mrs. Brown. Okay. And Mr. Davis, sorry. Good evening.
Hey, good evening. I'm Julie Conrad, the Director of Curriculum and Assessment, and it's that time of year for our district-wide data accountability report. So we're going to be taking a backwards look at where our state assessments and our district-wide data is for the 2021 school year. When we look at our strategic plan, remember that we have 5 goals within our strategic plan. And today's district-wide data accountability report is really going to be focusing on how we are doing with goal number 1 within our strategic plan, improving student learning for all to ensure being college, career, and community ready. And it says they're graduates, and we are going to talk about graduation rates. So as a reminder, when we are looking at Wisconsin state assessment data, the assessment data is part of a broader system. So tonight we are going to be focusing on ACT for grade 11, ACT Aspire grades 9 and 10, Wisconsin Forward Exam grades 3 and 8, and our DLM, remember, is our alternative assessment for those students that are on essential elements, or 1% of our population. Also, as a reminder, I will be back in the month of December, right after our state report cards are released for district and for our schools, and that's anticipated to be mid-November. Another piece of our data system is that once again tonight, we are going to be talking about state level or district-wide data. But keep in mind that there are many different data sources that we look at a regular basis. A classroom teacher and a student is looking at their learning data or evidence of learning every day or multiple times during a day. So when we're talking tonight, we are talking about limited scores. We're going to be talking about lagging indicators. In other words, this assessment happened last spring. We've had assessment results since August, and we've been working diligently with that data, and we'll talk about what we've been doing with it between August and today. So up there you will see some of our internal student data assessment pieces, along with other data indicators that we look at how we are doing on goal number 1 of our strategic plan. But first off, I want you to imagine for just a second this beautiful view of the Fox River. And nope, this is not in the board packet, but just imagine for a second this dock here. And when you walk up to a dock, you're either going to go boating or you're going to go fishing. And the first thing that you probably notice is, where is the water line, up on that dock? Is the water high today? Is the water low, right? And that's going to give you an indication on probably maybe how you're going to adjust your fishing pole, or maybe what you have to do when you dock your boat, right? So now here's our Oregon Street Bridge, and look off to the right. You'll notice that there is an indicator of where that water line is underneath that bridge, right? And where that water line is and where the center mark is going to tell you a little bit more about how you're going to have to navigate that boat, what you might have to be looking out for as you go down the river and you're navigating that. So why I'm showing you these pictures is I want you to think about our student data and the data that we are going to be showing you tonight as like a water line, as to say, where are our students and where is our learning right now, and what that means for educators and for our students. Because what we're doing is, depending on where our water line is, we are having to navigate and we are having to make adjustments we have to employ different strategies in order to navigate down the river or into the lake. But no matter what, we are going to be able to make wherever our destination is, because we've adjusted our strategies and our navigation based on where that water line is. And so keep that in mind as we're talking tonight about our data. So the first thing is that when DPI released all of the data for the state, one thing they asked us to look at is our DPI test participation rates. And you'll notice for the Oshkosh Area School District, our staff did a fantastic job of getting our students tested, because we knew we wanted the information about where are they with their learning after the pandemic, after we've gone through the different learning models, where are they? And you can see that participation rate with the rest of the state. So when you take a look at this and we start comparing ourselves with other districts, we start comparing ourselves with the state, who took the test and how many students take the test, just keep that in mind, the context. Keep that in mind. Think about the water level again and what that means when we're taking a look and making decisions on what our strategies are with that. So the first thing up is we want to know where our graduates are. And so currently the 2020 ACT graduates. So in other words, all of our students can take the ACT as 11th graders, but then they have the opportunity to take it again if they so choose. And so this is where our average score is for Oshkosh Area School District and how many students took the ACT within there. Please note that the class of 2015 was the last class where it was optional to take the ACT. After that, every single student did that. So for class of 2020, our composite score is sitting at 19.3, and you can see we've done a little up and down throughout the years. So as a little reminder, this is our class of 2020 and where they were with their different assessment scores. You can see that 19.3 composite rate when it comes to how they did for the class of 2020. But what I want to point out, and we have something to be very proud of, is our class of 2021, so our current seniors right now. Even though we had a pandemic, we went against the trend, and our composite is actually up to 19.4, which is well above the state, and we haven't been above the state in a while. And so I want to point out this first score in writing. So last year for the ACT, our writing composite was 6.2. And this is out of 12. And this year, our writing is up 7.1. And moving 1 point on the ACT is very statistically significant. And so I don't know if Annika has any insight into this, but what we've heard from students is that taking it online meant they did not have to handwrite their essay. And so with that, being able to word process or type their essay, we got a better read or a more true read on what writing looks like for our students. And so they did a wonderful job with that. So I don't know if you agree that it was easier to word process versus handwrite your essay.
Yeah, I mean, I took the ACT both. I wrote an essay one time and I took it again and I typed it on the school one. I did much better when I typed it, actually. I do think it's how students write now. We type our essays. We don't ever handwrite our essays. So I think having that was very advantageous for students.
Yeah. And Oshkosh was one of the few school districts that chose to do the ACT online versus the traditional paper and pencil. So that was the right call for us to do that.
Quick question. Is this for the class that graduated in 2021 or the class?
This is our current class.
That graduated in 2022?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Or wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Yeah, we're
Grade
class
11.
of 2022.
Yes, your class of 2022.
But they took it in the fall
Fall,
of 21.
thank you.
So it
At
was
the spring of
tested.
2021.
Yeah, so it's
correct.
not the class
There
of
you go.
2021, it's 2022, but
Yes.
it's just because they took it in the fall.
Spring.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for correcting that.
No
There you
worries.
go. The other data piece here is that we are up in reading. We're up from 18.3 to 19.5, and we're also up in English with our ACT. So congratulations to our juniors. So taking a look at graduation rate across the state, including for us, has been impacted by the pandemic. And so as you can see, our graduation rate is down as compared to the state and down from last year. But one thing I do want to point out is that for the class of 2019, so that was that first graduating class of the pandemic, right? Or the class of, we were at 91.8%. Their current rate, because students have gone back and picked up or continued, we're currently at 94.3%. So we are predicting for our students that we are also going to pick back up students as we go into the 5th year and the 6th year after that. And then you can see that once again in our rates here, our 4-year rate, 5-year rate, 6-year rate, 7-year rate. And we do have programs and we do have opportunities and services available for students to earn their degree. So the other thing we do is we take a look at our 4-year graduation rate in comparison, and there's 2 ways to compare. This first one is for the class of 2019 with large districts, and you can see where they're at. And then here is our 4-year graduation rate when compared for the class of 2020 and for their graduation rate. And we can see where we are, and you can see where we tracked. The key to all of this is keep in mind that we did not change policy 5460, which is our graduation policy, that all of our requirements to obtain a diploma here in our school district remain the same. There are other school districts that chose to modify their graduation requirements. We did not. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And then here's our 4-year graduation rate compared to our athletic conference, class of 2018. And then here is the class of 2020. Another indicator that is in our strategic plan and that we talk about quite a bit is our initial post-secondary enrollment trends. And so one thing that we've been working in our past strategic plans and with academic and career planning is ensuring, like, are our graduates ready? And so one of those indicators is what percentage of our graduates are enrolling in either a 2-year or 4-year. And you can see the trend there. You will notice that for 2018, 19, et cetera, it may not add, like when you add up the 2, 4-year and 2-year, you may be going, those 2 don't add up to the bottom number. They won't, because we have, this is initial enrollment after they graduate, so that immediately that next year, either the fall semester or spring semester, they're enrolling. And sometimes students start in a 2-year and then enroll in a 4-year during that second semester, so it's not going to add up exactly with that. So we were on that trajectory. We were there, right? And then once again, COVID happened and enrollment in post-secondary was down across the state and across the nation. So we have to get back on track with that. So the next slides are going to deal with mathematics. And so the first thing is that in all of the slides on here, you're going to notice we're missing 2019-20, right? So there's a trend, and then there's nothing. I usually call it the COVID blip when it comes to data. And so you can see that no matter what school district we were in, the water line, the performance, the achievement is down for every single. The pandemic has hit our learners, right, in achievement. You'll see throughout the data that our youngest learners were the most impacted when it came to achievement, and that pans out across our data as well. So here's our forward exam trend. We moved with the state. Here is our performance when it comes to grade level. And you will note that our eighth graders is the last class that had, they were kindergartners when we started to redo everyday math and we shifted over to bridges. But a key thing to notice here is that 8th grade, we have already, right before the pandemic, we were already putting things in place to start to universally adjust implementation and curriculum at 8th grade with math, because across our region, Dr. Brown and I meet with curriculum directors regionally, and 8th grade math and that particular score we are working on as regionally is what's going on with that, because we typically see that drop from 7th grade to 8th grade in our 8th grade performance. So whenever you take a look at data, the first thing that happens is more questions get asked, right? Because, you know, what is going on here and what is our analysis from there. So the next piece, now we're coming into high school, and this is grades 9 and 10 with ACT Aspire. And you can see our trajectory, and you can also see where our performance is up against the state. Once again, showing that our high school was less our high schoolers were less impacted than our younger learners when it came to performance. And that also holds the same, like we were down, but it once again holds the same when we get into ACT, when it's the percent that are considered proficient with ACT math. So one question we ask, because 8th grade math is a key indicator of where students are going to go when it comes to high school graduation. You can see where our 8th graders currently are, and just like the state, we're down. We do use iReady Diagnostic, and that is another assessment outside of state testing, because we want to know how students are growing, right? We want to know about growth, we want to know about how they're moving, and not wait for state assessments to tell us that. And so this was the percentage that were at or above grade level in the spring. A different assessment piece. So when it comes to math proficiency for grades 3 through 8, this is where we line up with districts. And this is the set of districts that we're normally compared to, because they either, we compete against them, or they're geographically located close to us. And so you can see where we are with our percent of students that are proficient in math. And also, this is a little bit of a change for us, because math tends to be has been our subject that we outperform other school districts or the state in. Keep in mind, across the board, math was impacted more by COVID or by interrupted learning. Math is really linear, sequential, like it's very much needs to be in order. And breaking up our curriculum, Bridges or CPM, that was not the way that it was intended to be taught, either in a hybrid or virtual mode, and we can see the impact of that, and that same impact can be seen across the state and in our sister districts. And once again, here is it lined up over time, or the trend with our comparison districts, and you can see where everybody has, basically that trend has dropped with COVID for 2021. So I'm going to pause for a second, and so that was math. Does anybody have any questions on math before we move into ELA? I think it was.
Go ahead, Dr. Herzog.
Oh, thank you. I'd like to go back to slide 19.
Can you help me? Which one is? Well, I can see it now. Okay. This one? Okay.
Yes, and I just lost it. Okay, I can read it up here.
Yeah.
So the line graph information there is providing the percent proficient.
Correct.
But the number at the bottom showed Oshkosh math versus the statewide math. So I'm a little confused as to, is that a composite number across those proficient? Is it for a specific year? I don't know where the Oshkosh math 19.5, statewide math 19.1 fit in.
So that's the ACT Aspire. I think, versus the ACT Composite.
I'm talking about these numbers at the bottom of that graph.
Oh, those are the school years.
Yeah.
It's number 19.
No, I think she's looking one more. So there
Is
you
it
go.
this one?
That
Oh,
Yes.
gotcha.
Sorry, numbers are different.
So I'm sorry.
I'm sorry,
yes.
on my computer it's number 19.
Yep. Oh, sorry.
So on this for math, so so ACT reports in composites. In other words, what is the score out of 36?
Okay.
And then the state looks at us from accountability They set a benchmark or a cut score, and they say any student that's scoring above this is considered proficient. So this graph represents the percent of students that hit that benchmark to be proficient. Down here, this gives you a reference for what that composite looks like for the average composite. So it's looking at the data in two different ways.
All right, I'm still confused. So the Oshkosh
Okay.
19.5, is that an average from 2014-15 to 2020-21, or is that a score for 2020-21?
2021.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank
That is
you.
that is our composite. Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I know that, I don't know. I'm assuming that based on these scores, that we have either made changes to curriculum,
Mhm.
assessed the way
Correct.
it's being taught, have
Mhm.
our kids back in school, which I know is huge.
Yes.
But can you talk a little bit about changes that have been made to help us get back up to where we were?
Correct. So since we're talking about math, let me talk about math, and then we'll do ELA and we'll talk about those strategies. So absolutely, we've had our data since August, and we were waiting to see what was the impact. We were predicting that it was going to be like our water line, it was going to be lower. We knew that. So once we had our data, we did an analysis. Which grade levels were most impacted? What did we do during pandemic learning? So in other words, so for example, for Bridges, were we doing 3 lessons per week, or were we doing 4 lessons per week? Were we doing 5 lessons per week? What was that? What was going on there? So we took a look at that. And then based on that, we made adjustments. So adjustment number 1 is we had to get back to basics when it came to math, whether it was Bridges or CPM, and make sure that we are effectively and universally implementing the curriculum the way it should be when we are in person with students. So that was step number 1. So regrounding everybody in those pieces. Then step number 2 is that we have to be teaching at grade level, specifically for math. And then alongside that, we know where there has been gaps or unfinished learning during that time. And so depending on for that particular classroom or that particular grade level, we've been supplementing and inserting additional lessons, going back and doing additional work, backtracking, specifically like in math, to be able to fill in the gaps. So that's absolutely been current, and it depends on the grade level. Like 8th grade, seeing where they were with their achievement is going to be a different strategy than what we did, let's say, with 5th graders. And so that depends, but we've already done the analysis. We know where our gaps are. We're back to the basics when it comes to implementation of Bridges and CPM, and then making adjustments from there.
Okay. Now, one of the pieces for Bridges too is the most important message is to tell the teachers to stay the course, meaning true full implementation of Bridges. There's a lot of research out there about if you go back and you try to remediate, how much more loss of learning happens. And so we're saying to keep the course so that we can continue accelerating that learning.
Correct.
Is it? Thank you.
Mr. Carnes? I have a couple questions. And can you just define, what do we mean by proficient?
So proficient means that a student, based on the standards identified or the performance level at that particular grade level, that the student has met that particular performance level. So for any one of the given tests, there is a specific scale or score, and so the state sets the line or the benchmark for what proficient is at that particular grade level. So it means that students can do and demonstrate what is being asked for a particular standard at that grade level.
And these tests were during the spring? Correct. Okay.
Spring of 2021.
I was thinking if it was in the fall, they have the whole school year to catch up to where
Nope.
they need to be, because I know we just did iReady for my kids were doing that stuff. So
Correct.
I guess, so I'm looking at, on this one here.
Correct.
I get that we're compared to the state, but I mean, is that acceptable in any way to say that less than 50% of the kids in anything are proficient? It seems strange to look at to say where we are. I get we're comparing against the state, but it seems, I don't know, awfully disappointing, you know, to have less than 50% of the kids
Right.
proficient in math at their grade, right?
Right.
And so I guess that's the way it is, and we're, you know, are the states setting proficiency levels that are off the charts, that are kind of almost unattainable? Or, because, I mean, based on if the whole state's there, you gotta think then, is that the case?
So proficiency levels were adjusted, and now I'm not going to think of the school year, and I think it was 2012, 2013, that the whole state of Wisconsin reset what the level was to be considered proficient, because that was with the WKCE and other assessment pieces back at that time. So what they had done was there is the National Assessment of Educational Progress, the NAEP. And so what the state of Wisconsin did is they took their overall scores on their current assessments and adjust that benchmark to match what NAEP is. So for example, if you think about like a thermometer and you think about the freezing point, so in Celsius it's 0 degrees, right? And then in Fahrenheit it's 32 degrees. So you're taking different assessments and you're saying this is where the proficient point is across all of those assessments.
Okay.
That proficient point was raised back in 2012-13, and they're constantly like readjusting a little bit where those cut scores are.
I mean, is it almost, we want them to be there to continue to push, like to?
I think that was the intention, was to continue to push, saying, hey, you know, our students can do more. We are raising the bar, we're raising our expectations, and
Okay.
this is where the actual score is.
Okay.
The other thing I say all the time as we were talking about this is a data point and this is a score. Please keep in mind as we're talking about all this that a child is not a score. Behind every single one of these numbers and dots are students, right? Behind there. And this is where they were at that particular point in time. And so we know that some students are awesome test takers. We know some students aren't, right? And we need to be looking at the whole picture, right, of a student when it comes to this. These are things that we're held accountable to, and this is where our district data is right now.
Okay.
And that's where the score is.
I have one more question.
Absolutely.
So, looking at comparatively to other schools around us in our own
Mhm.
conference, and that was
Mhm.
good.
Mhm.
There's also a sign just outside the building talking about the low poverty rate within our school district. So,
Mhm.
is that play a factor in what we are dealing with in our district compared to Hortonville, Winneconne, Kimberly? Does that all play a part in where we are, or is there other factors in play when we see us maybe a little lower when it comes to those scores than other, you know, is that a true comparison? Is Appleton more of a diverse background to compare us to than maybe to some of the other ones?
I would say Appleton would be a fair comparison. Do you know what I'm saying? When we're looking at demographics comparatively, I mean, Appleton can be like a comparison piece. At the end of the day, the state of Wisconsin, and we're saying this is where we want students to be. This is our grade level expectations, and this is where we are right now. We know that every single student brings challenges, right? Or there may be barriers or challenges to the table, and it's our job as educators to figure out how do we overcome those so our students can succeed and be successful. This is just a gauge of where they currently are academically.
Perfect.
And we also know, our standardized tests, can you predict different demographics based on standardized tests and how students will perform? Yes, that is a true statement.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I just wanted to circle back to what you said earlier about how we expected a dip in math, because I don't know how you do algebra and geometry and calculus virtually. So I'm guessing that's probably part of the reason that some of these scores are lower than we'd hoped. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
Yes, I would say that math was the most impacted, and if you talk to students, they really struggled with,
Oh, yeah.
especially like, let's say, our middle school and our high schoolers with upper
Right.
level math,
Right.
not being in person.
Right,
Correct.
yeah.
That would definitely be the case. Annika?
Is there any data that compare like total school district budget, not just what we're all given by the state, but kind of like the affluency of the area to these test scores?
Like how that lines up, like,
Mhm.
so what is, let's say, the percent of students that are qualify for free and reduced lunch versus their test score, and how does that intersect? Is that what you're asking?
So more like average household income, or
Mhm.
or not as no, sorry, that's not what I meant. Not average household income, but how much like a school would get from like referendums. So like how much money
Okay.
our school district budget compared to other school district budgets and their referendums they have, and if those budget differences have any correlation with test scores.
If I could add to your question or help me
Mhm.
clarify that. One of the things that districts or the state often does is look at how much per student are we spending.
Mhm.
So if one school district is maybe spending $9,000 per student versus another one that's $12,000 per student,
Mhm.
you can then look at how are those students performing. You can't say that this much money accounts for these scores, but you might be able to see some trends that if districts are spending more, maybe the scores are higher. That's what you'd probably expect, but you'd have to know, that would be something you could compare between districts. What's the average number of dollars they're spending per student? And it varies across the state.
Mhm. Correct. When school report cards come out, data usually is presented that way and saying where do school districts fall comparatively to their spending. So, yeah, and that's something more that we can look at, looking at it from like a report cards perspective, because it gives a more global look.
Go ahead, Liz.
Yeah, I am just curious. On the Math Forward exam, we are slightly below state average. It seems almost every year. There's been a few grades that have been different.
Yep.
But then when it comes to the ACT, both Aspire and the ACT 11th grade, we are above the state average. I don't know what to make of that, so I wondered if you had any sort of interpretation that
So that's
explains
what
it.
we've been talking about, because like our 8th graders, they go from where they're performing currently, and then they hit ACT Aspire, and they're like popping back up. So number one, it's a different assessment. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, we're trying to figure that out, because in our region, we use, most of our school districts in our region use CPM in the same math curriculums that we do. So that's one of the questions that we keep asking ourselves, is
Yeah.
what's going on. But the biggest thing is that in all of this, we're achieving this, but what we want to be concentrating is growing, and we want to be concentrating on growth. So as educators, once again, right now we're taking a look at the box score, right? Here's the statistics. But as educators, we're constantly looking at what does our data look like, and what is our student learning? What does our growth look like during this school year, so that we can continue to move? And we've definitely gotten back to that now that we are in person, right?
My biggest takeaway from this is data points are data points. I think you use them to make adjustments and try to make the whole school district better. I noticed in 16, from 16 to 17 we jumped, and then from 17 to 18 we jumped. 2019 we went slightly lower in our scores. You said before that we identified gaps. As a board, as far as making policy and allocating resources, I would find it very beneficial to know how, as a board, how we can help with those gaps. Because if we know where the gaps are, you guys know where the gaps are, and if there's something as a district we can do to bridge them, that's something that I'm most interested in, because moving forward is what's most important, in my opinion.
Yes.
What are other things we can do gap-wise, or?
So, for example, I believe you have coming up in December, we are going to present on literacy, and specifically how we're progressing in literacy. And in that particular board workshop, we are going to specifically talk about what is needed, what resources are needed, and how you can help and support us with that growth. So we're going to start with literacy. So
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So we've talked about that, in the context of literacy and what we need, and then also talked about it in the context of legislative advocacy, because there's certainly some legislation right now with the attempt to fill those gaps, but I think it's not exactly hitting the target for what our needs are. So I think one of the things we're going to build off of in the next couple months is laying out, if you think of it, kind of our literacy platform, like what we want, what our resources need to be, and then how can we begin to advocate for legislation that'll meet those needs, more around professional development, more around resources, less around more testing, because we feel like we have enough scales. I said, like in my diet work, like if I buy 3 scales and step on all 3 scales in the morning, it doesn't change anything for me. I really need a better diet. I need to exercise more. I have to do different things. I need different resources. So that's really what we're trying to do, is making sure that we're identifying what those resources are, and then begin, for us, and I think we can be state leaders on this, begin our advocacy around literacy policy, and that's something that the entire board can help with.
Awesome. Yeah, I just always go back to student first, and if we identify things and we know that we can do things better, then that's something I'm always for.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, that'll be coming up in the next couple months.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yep. Right, so let's head into English language arts. The first step is how are K1 and 2 performing when it comes to early literacy or reading. And so you can see PALS is our literacy screener. Every single school district in the state of Wisconsin is required to assess students in K1-2 when it comes to early literacy skills or reading. And so PALS is our chosen assessment. And you can see this one, we did a chart here, and you can see where we were in the spring of 2019 versus the spring of 2021. And once again, this shows or pans out, once again, our youngest learners are the ones that have been most impacted by not having in-person learning. The good news is, and we can talk more about this and you'll hear more about this, is that our youngest learners are our most resilient learners, right? And being in person and our adjustments that we've already done with curriculum has and instruction has already panned out and made a difference. So we're already seeing growth in our young learners. This is our trend in ELA proficiency when it comes to the forward exam. Keeping in mind that the years are across the bottom, and this is our trend. So we've closed our gap with the state a little bit, but this is our 3rd through 8th graders. Keep in mind that English language arts is not just reading, it's the listening. There's a listening component to this. There's writing and language as well as reading, so it's not just reading. And you can see where we are. Once again, our youngest learners, our 3rd graders, were the most impacted, and our 8th graders. And so then how are 3rd graders with proficiency when it comes to reading? You can see where we are in the forward exam, and then you can see we were at 55% of 3rd graders when it came to iReady diagnostic, because once again, the state and we use 3rd grade reading as a benchmark or an indicator, a postmark, right, of where we are when it comes to that.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So when they're kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, we're at 69, 70% proficient, and then we get to 3rd graders and we fall off quite a bit.
It's 2 different assessments. So I know they're different benchmarks. So with this is basically saying, do students have the foundational reading skills, or do they have the foundational reading skills to reach proficiency? So in kindergarten, we're looking at letter recognition, letter sound. When you get to 2nd grade, we're looking at can they read high frequency words? It gets more complex as you're going there. When they get to 3rd grade and they're taking the forward exam, they're being scored for proficiency on comprehension. They're asked to read a passage. They're then doing a text-dependent analysis. In other words, they're reading a text, and then they have to write and answer questions on that as 3rd graders. So it's 2 very different assessments, and the rigor that comes with this is pretty high. So it's just two different assessments and different ways to look at it.
Um, So coming back to your comment that you made when you led off this portion
Mhm.
of your presentation, it talks about the resiliency of
Mhm.
learners at this stage as well.
Mhm.
Because what I just heard you say is that we are providing a basic foundation for kindergarten, first and second, and then in third grade, we start to challenge them a lot more in regards to those foundations.
Mhm.
And that could be an indicator of why there might be a lag at the third grade.
Well,
Right?
and correct, but also remember that it's measuring two
Sure.
very different things,
Yeah.
yes, at the same time,
Okay.
so. Mhm.
Your data points did indicate that that's a statewide trend
Absolutely.
in third grade, right?
Mhm.
Right there,
Yes.
which
Mhm.
means testing.
Right here.
I mean, the test has to be different.
Mhm. It is, very much
Which,
so.
I mean, just skewing the numbers throughout the whole state, which makes me feel
Mhm.
better about that, but.
But once
um,
again, keep in mind that it just, this provides us information. We've already been looking at this and saying, how are we going to grow our learners based on right here where our water line is, right? How are we going to navigate those waters based on where our students are at now, right? And what's that going to take to do that? So coming into our 9th and 10th graders, we've crossed that above the state average, and they're above the state average again when it comes to ACT, Aspire, ELA. And the same thing, once again, our 11th graders hit that one out of the park. So doing a great job with that.
Can I ask a question?
Mhm.
Or say something? So at our education committee
Mhm.
meeting a couple months back,
Yep.
we had talked about this, and one of the slides you had talked about a little bit before was kids are starting at a lower point than they have in the past, right?
Mhm.
So
Right.
we have more work to do, and we can see that working
Mhm.
through.
Right.
And one of the questions I asked was, do we get them to where they need to be?
Mhm.
And what can we do? And I agree with Mr. Wright, because what can we
Mhm.
do
Right.
to help supplement that? From what I can see here, I guess that's a positive when you're looking at it, is when they get to 9th, 10th, 11th, we're up above state average, and for
Mhm.
11th grade, we're
Mhm.
well above, right? Like
Yep.
we're getting there. So I think that's a positive trend. So
Mhm.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So, and I think what you're referring to is our data that we presented, that our students that are coming in as kindergartners are coming in knowing fewer letters. So our starting line when it comes to getting to third grade proficiency is further back. But the bottom line is, wherever the starting line is that's where the child is, right?
Mhm.
And so that's our job to figure out how do we get there, right? How do we get there and make sure that all students are ready, right? College, career, and community ready.
Well, and we don't get any, it's not about having them ready at third grade. It's about having them
Correct.
ready when we're sending them on.
Correct.
So it's all part of it. We'd love
Right.
them to be there the whole way, but
Right,
we
but
have
it's
work to
also,
do.
it's also mile markers, right? We
Yeah.
want to know, right? And the other thing is, when we're talking about this, we're looking for outcomes, right? We want students to be successful. So any of these things we're talking about are not excuses, right? They're just saying, this is where we are right now, right?
Yep.
Ms. Conrad, were you surprised that it flew up that high at the end? I was thinking that it was going to be like math and maybe decline a little bit due to the pandemic and online learning and everything, but we're way ahead of the state in this category, which is awesome.
Yeah, so like when we were back on the slide saying that, like we had that jump in writing, that's a big contributor to that, because remember, ELA is a
Right.
combination of writing, the English, and the reading portion of it. So we had the big jump. The second thing is there was an increase in those areas as well. And once again, across the state and across the nation, math was more impacted than reading and English language arts in all assessments.
Ms. Conrad, I agree with you
Mhm.
that we're looking at outcomes.
Mhm.
And I don't know exactly what that report's going to look like in December, but I'm suspecting it's going to ask for more resources, whether those are human resources or time or
Mhm.
material resources. And with that would be the expectation that we see results. We see positive results, a year's worth of growth in a year.
Mhm.
Because like you said, behind every one of these scores is a child, and if they're going to
Yep.
be college, career, and community and
Yep.
civic ready, we need to see growth. And I think that's, across the country, that's been an issue, to make sure that we're seeing results by whatever resources we devote to something. So I think that's something this board will be eager to see. At the same time, we have to recognize that change doesn't come overnight. And so if there would be additional resources allocated for the 22-23 school year, we would expect that it would take some time to see growth or a change. Change theory, I'm told, takes 3 to 5 years. So we would expect within that time frame, we see some positive changes. Our board policies list multiple times that we are a continuous improvement district. So if we try something and it doesn't work, that gives us the leeway to tweak that or figure out a way to change it in such a way that we can see growth. So I think the board is eager to see growth for all of our students and to put the emphasis on the fact that we educate all students in the district. No matter what starting line, no matter where the water line is for each one, we need to move all of them forward. So I'm excited about the opportunity that this provides for us, but recognizing that in the end we have to see results. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Mr. Wright?
I don't know if this is the exact time to ask this, but I can't go through this report without asking it. The early intervention program at Washington, which I went to, it was awesome this summer. Did that provide an uptick in scores for those students on this testing?
So what you're referring to is Summer Climb. That
Yep.
was sponsored by the United Way, and that was the first time we ran it. The students that participated in Summer Climb took their assessment. So none of that is indicated in here.
Okay.
So they took the assessments in spring. They attended Summer Climb this summer. And so now we're going to see what's going to be the impact this fall and throughout this school year
Okay.
as we come to that. So
I'm really interested
So this
in that.
happened after, yes, we're very interested in that as well.
Okay.
Yeah, we're very interested in that as
Are
well.
you ready? I just want to point out these last two slides, as you mentioned earlier, the growth, just, taking out the red line, not comparing us to state, just comparing us to ourselves, the growth over the last 5-6 years is wonderful. So it's good to see.
Yeah, when we're talking about here, like you're seeing a positive trajectory, right, with groups of students going here. When we look at growth is really going to come when we take a look at our school and our district report card, like next month.
Yeah.
Because right now, we're just looking at attainment scores. We're seeing what attainment level did students look at. We haven't really even talked about growth. But you can see we're looking also from a district lens. We want to have that trajectory change. We want to have that trend change to be more students are proficient.
Yeah.
So here is where we are with ELA compared to other school districts with the forward exam. Remember, this is grades 3 through 8. Grades 3 through 8. So this is where we are, the state compared to us and our other school districts. And once again, just note that just like our water line went down, the water line in all the other school districts went down as well, just as a note. And you can see that trend here also with forward exam ELA scores across our region. I'm actually going to back up. So that concludes ELA before we go into science. So are there any questions on ELA? English language arts.
Go ahead.
Okay. Then how are we performing with science? Remember, science is given at 4th and 8th grade in elementary, and you can see where we performed this past spring compared to the state. Our 8th graders, they did well on this one, which is awesome. This is our trend when it comes to science for grades 4 and 8. This is ACT Aspire 9th and 10th grade for science. And you can see where our trend is. And this is our trend for ACT for science. Then in social studies, the forward exam is administered to 4, 8, and 10. And you can see where our 4th, 8th, and once again, high schoolers, we're doing well in 2021. And then you can see where our trend is for 4, 8, and 10 when it comes to social studies over time. So any questions on science and social studies? Okay. So the next slide is, it's good to know where our demographics are. So you saw where our demographics are. Our students with disabilities is up percentage to 16%, and economically disadvantaged is up from 42 to 43.7, and our English learners are up from 5% to 5.9% of our student population. And also you can see where the diversity in our student population. So the next part we're going to talk about here is we also talk about how are different subgroups or different students with different backgrounds doing when it comes to assessment. So taking a look at it in different ways. So we take a look at the group with students with disabilities. We take a look at that. And something to point out is that 60% of our students with disabilities are considered economically disadvantaged. When we look at English language learners, 76% of ELs. And then when we look at race and ethnicity, you can see the percentage, 35% of our students that identify as white are economically disadvantaged, and 70% of students of color. And so once again, just something to think about, like when we're minding the gap and where performance is, this is something to consider. And we consider that every day when we are taking a look at how we work with students. So starting off with ACT ELA, this is how students compare in the trend with race. Subgroups when it comes to economically disadvantaged, our gaps still exist and have not changed. If anything, with COVID and the pandemic, our gaps have probably widened. Then with ACT Math, this is where performance is. When it comes to students with disabilities, on the ACT, this is economically disadvantaged versus not economically disadvantaged. Going into forward exam with ELA, going into forward exam with math, then going into forward exam with ELA, with math, and the same ELA with race and ethnicity, and with math. So, and then with our English learners, and then with our English learners with math. So we definitely have students that have challenges and bring that into the classroom every single day. But once again, that's our job to figure out how all means all standards, all students, right? And that's our job to figure out how we accomplish that and move all students.
So the last part was kind of what I was referring to earlier when I came to like the diversity part of our district, right? With what we are doing. And I like what we've said, that every one of these data points is a student.
Correct.
And in some sense, in our society, our schools are left to pick up the pieces when it comes to some of this stuff, when it comes to a lot of this. And so I appreciate seeing the work that our district does to do what we can to help everybody. I think you've said that before. It's not about certain groups, it's everybody.
Correct.
And so I appreciate you sharing this information and having us aware. And as Mr. Wright said, what can we do to help not only the economically advantaged, but the economically disadvantaged? Because every one of those students impacts our community, and so we want the community to be, you know, better. So thank you.
Correct.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
I just, excuse me, I just have a comment. First of all, a couple of comments. I know that a lot of work went into this presentation. You presented us with a tremendous amount of food for thought, and so I want to thank you and Dr. Brown and whoever was involved in this. So thank you for that. I also appreciate on the bar graphs, excuse me, on the line graphs, that those are in different colors. It makes it much easier to discern. One of the things that I'm confused by on the line graphs as compared to the bar graphs. For example, if you take slide 43.
Yeah, can you help me? Which one?
44, I think, will be for you.
Maybe yours is 44, my number is
can't.
43.
One more.
Yeah, there you
One
go.
more?
We'll pick one, anyone, that's
That
fine.
one.
That's fine.
Okay.
I would find it more helpful if this were depicted as a bar graph rather than a line graph. I don't know if the difference between the 2017-18 is the same as the 2018-19. Or the gap, or the difference between 2015-16 is the same as the difference between 16-17, because the lines connecting those dots are an upward trajectory, but I don't know if there's any change there. It would be more helpful for me, I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but if those were bar graphs, or if there were numbers assigned to those data points, because I don't know, for example, the dots on the left-hand side, what number is that between 40% and 60% for that first dot? That's a rhetorical question. Similarly, between 0% and 20%, I don't know what that number is.
Right. And so we have that. I think for the purpose of a presentation, we're really looking for trends and patterns, right?
Okay.
In this. And so absolutely, do we have the numbers? Do we have this disaggregated down to schools, grade levels? It's like absolutely. But yeah. And so do we have that? Yes.
Okay.
I don't know if it's appropriate to put in a big presentation, but yes, we can put the numbers up there or
Okay.
have them. Yes.
And I know I'm one who really likes data, and so maybe the rest of the board isn't interested, or it's not as important to them. So I'm only speaking for myself. Thank you.
Do you have comments? Go ahead.
Yes, could you please bring up slide 29?
Okay, help me.
Yeah,
Which one?
you got like
It's,
10 more to go back.
Comparison between districts, percent of students proficient on board exam.
Probably one
ELA.
more.
This
Right
one?
there?
Yeah, this one, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I thought these numbers were really kind of encouraging, because we did not decline as much as some of our neighboring schools did. And then when you see that places like even Kimberly went down 14%, you're like, wow, the pandemic really had an impact. But I think it's also kind of encouraging to see that we did not decline as much as some of the other schools did. So I don't know, I just thought that was a very interesting slide, and thank you for putting all of this data together. I find it incredibly valuable, and I know it takes a ton of work, so thank you for all that you do.
Sure.
Go ahead, Mr. Wright.
I like data too. We got to be, real about this data. And I don't think, as a school district, we're going to do everything we can. And as a board, I know at least that we'll do everything we can. Why I'm most interested in the data from Washington moving forward is because in every one of these graphs, we see that kids with less resources don't perform as well and have less of a chance to succeed. And I feel like as a district, we have to do everything we can as a district, but we have to continually also work on and be mindful of partnerships. Like the partnership that we created to provide those kids with extra literacy resources through the summer, I feel like we just gotta surround them with as many supports and partnerships as we can to really make a dent. And I just want us as a district to continually be searching for those types of opportunities, because in order for every kid to have the best opportunity, I think that's something that's gonna be a must. So I just wanna highlight that. And if the Washington school thing worked really well, let's see if we can expand it. You know what I mean? Let's see how many resources we can wrap around the kids that need them. Because the kids that are not economically disadvantaged are doing better because they're getting wrapped with those resources. So that's my thoughts.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you. It's
Oh.
always very informative.
Yep. So we'll be back next month.
Thank you very much.
Great job, Julie.
Thank you, Julie.
All right, so next up, we have individually considered resolutions. Give me one moment to, all right. Resolution number 1 reads, be it resolved that the Oshkosh Area School District Board of Education approve the school district safety plan confirmation letters for 2021, 2022 to fulfill the annual requirements of Act 143 as filed with the Secretary of the Board of Education. Looking for a motion.
Second.
Moved by Carlin, seconded by Herzog. We are open for any discussion. Do you want to give a brief synopsis of what this is for the public?
Yep, yes, will do. So, so we have Sarah Paquette, who's here. Dr. Paquette is the principal at Terry Tippler Middle School and for ELPS, and has been a leader in this district. And I would say, just from my assessments across the state, like our safety plan, the EPCOT team, and specifically Sarah's leadership is second to none. So I just want to, just recognize her leadership and give her kudos for the work that's being done. So Act 143 is a state statute that looks at safety plans at individual buildings and provides requirements for districts on an annual basis to upgrade those plans. So Sarah's coordinated that for our district. So with that, I'll turn it over to her.
Sure, so you'll hear more about this in the December board meeting, as we'll have all of the requirements present for you to look at. Tonight, what you are looking through is each school has to compromise a letter talking about what were the safety procedures and practices that were ran through with students and staff. So you'll find a culmination of the letter and the practices, and then that gets signed by our board, and that's part of the annual upload that happens prior to January 1st. The other components that you will be seeing require us to have blueprints uploaded, and this is in a statewide system, so law enforcement would have access to that if there were ever an emergency. We review our entire school safety plan as a district. We also talk about safety assessments that get completed and different safety trainings. As a school district, we offer a lot of safety trainings to staff, some of which would be in response to an active shooter, so it could be an ALICE training. It might be our regular fire weather emergencies, and it really could encompass anything from a chemical spill to an explosion within the school. Maybe we have a very old boiler, but practicing all the different ways to have assessments and safety, and it also encompasses some of the mental health pieces. So having staff trained, being able to respond in a crisis, and being able to help with counseling aspects. So it really encompasses a lot of different safety trainings. And then we also talk about the different drills that we have to practice. Some are mandated by the state of Wisconsin, so we have to have monthly fire drills, maybe it's 2 tornado drills, and they really walk through what they want schools to practice with students. So what you'll see tonight are the sample letters from each of the schools, talking about what they did and how they practice these drills with students and staff. And you'll notice that it looks different at the elementary level versus the secondary level.
Is there any questions? I have one question, so I have to put my glasses back on so I can see them. So in looking in the letters, it looks like, well, let me rephrase that. What safety situation, how are the safety situations for schools decided? Is that decided by the state, or is that decided by the school?
So the different situations, there's going to be common ones that all schools might practice. Those were referenced earlier, such as fire, tornado, severe weather. We also practice active shooter. It might be just going into a medical hold. It could also be going into, if we want to, I don't know, it could be random, just a fire or a mechanical failure, how to respond and react. So the Epcot team, which comprises of Jackie Kiffmeyer, Kristen Berger, Beth Galeazzi, myself, and then Andrew Jones is also a key component. But we've also had many retired members who kind of help set and pave this way. So we have come up with a collection of different responses or tabletop activities for schools to practice. So in addition to what's completed in that letter, each school will sit down and go through one type of scenario. And again, it's practicing various things. It might be somebody bringing a weapon into the building. It might be somebody is just upset. We might have a missing student. It really can encompass a whole wide variety. And again, it's to help us plan for the unexpected and come up with what we could potentially do as a way to respond.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Just want to thank you for all of your work. This is very important work. Our number one concern is safety of our students and staff, and so it's imperative for us to make sure that each and every day people know that school is a safe place to be and for parents to send their children. So thank you.
Thank you, and all administrators on the Epcot team, that's utmost important. So kudos to them as well for continuing with the efforts.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
All right. Since there were no comments, please call the roll.
Peschel.
Aye.
Saligi.
Aye.
Wright.
Aye.
Wyman.
Aye.
Carlin.
Aye.
Herzog.
Aye.
Carnes.
Aye.
The ayes have it, resolution carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is resolution number 2. It reads, to be resolved that Eileen Fitzpatrick replace Jackie Jasek as Secretary, Deputy Clerk to the Board of Education effective November 1st, 2021, as filed with the Secretary of the Board of Education.
So move.
Second.
Moved by Herzog, seconded by Carlin. Any discussion?
You said November 1st. Here it
Nope.
says November 3rd.
I meant November 3rd, if I
Okay.
said November 1st. So, no comments? All right.
Saligi.
Aye.
Wright.
Aye.
Yep, please call the roll.
Wyman.
Yep.
Wyman.
Aye.
Carlin.
Eileen.
Herzog.
Aye.
Carnes.
Aye.
Peschel.
Aye.
Ayes have it, resolution carries.
Wonderful.
Welcome,
Congratulations.
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 I couldn't resist that cheesy joke.
All right. And next we are at request for future agenda items.
At some point, I'd like to revisit, I know Katie just got back from maternity leave, but we had asked her at one point to put together a plan
Sure.
for additional assistance, so I'd like to put that on a future agenda.
Okay,
I have one thing too.
go for it.
Well, I was just, do we have anything in the works for a training session on like the work of school boards and some of the training sessions that we've done regarding what our responsibilities are and whatnot? I think that those are always helpful to revisit
Sure.
periodically, and I know we have a lot on our plate, but I would like to see us do some more training on
Okay.
the role of the school board.
We can definitely do that, and over the next couple months, will
Yeah.
be also in our own evaluation period
Right.
as well. So
Yeah, thank you.
thanks you for the reminder and reflection. Okay. Anything else? Mr. Davis, was there anything that you captured throughout the meeting that you thought would be good for a future agenda item?
No, let's make sure that we capture the literacy presentation for the December meeting, and then we'll follow that up, I think, in January, when we're looking at the legislative agenda and kind of packaging that platform. So that'll be probably consecutive months, December and January, we'll have the literacy presentation and really outline those specific resources that we think we need to be able to take that next step.
Okay.
So.
Wonderful. All right, last chance, future agenda items? All right. I am looking for a motion to adjourn.
Excuse me,
Yes.
announcements?
Oh, I'm sorry, go right ahead.
Excuse me, sorry. Just wanted to announce that you should have all received your copy of the Wisconsin School News, the official publication of the Wisconsin Association of School Boards announcing the convention programs beginning on January 18th through the 21st. If you're interested in attending, you just need to let Sherry know, and she'll get you registered. This is that joint conference with the State School Board Association, as well as the School Business Association people and the School District Administrator Group.
I'm sorry
That's all
that I
right.
overlooked you.
You're fine.
All right, would entertain a motion to adjourn to executive session.
So moved.
Second.
All right. All right, so we are adjourning. I have to read it first. So, 1, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. 19.85, parent 1, parent E, Wisconsin State Statutes. A, discuss the potential purchase of a property. B, discuss the potential plan for the purchase of properties. Number 2, considering the disciplinary data of specific persons. 19.85, parent 1, parent F, Wisconsin State Statutes. A, review expulsion recommendation from an expulsion hearing for a high school student who engaged in conduct endanger the property, health, or safety of any employee or school board member of the school district in which the pupil is enrolled. State Statute 120.13, parent 1, parent C, parent E. Please call the roll.
Wright?
Aye.
Lyman?
Aye.
Carlin?
Aye.
Herzog?
Aye.
Carnes?
Aye.
Peschel?
Aye.
Salici?
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned to executive session.
Did you see that?